247 Developments have taken the lead in producing kits of wagons that aren't available ready to run or in kit form from anywhere else. And I must say, I really enjoyed making this kit, and in particular the painting and finishing was something that I found really quite rewarding to do. I really did like the quality of the detailing. It's a great little project to build something new and unique. Big hello to you, so great to see you, and I hope you are well. Now if you're thinking Jenny's a funny colour, I need to adjust something there, then don't worry, I have not been stood next to a Ford Cortina when it's been getting resprayed into some kind of rustic gold. In fact, I've been staring a little too closely at that weird glowy orb in the sky when I went on my holidays to Italy. So a little bit healthier, got a bit of vitamin D in me, but that's not what today's video is all about. Instead, we are finishing off a kit that 247 Developments very kindly sent to the channel actually over 6 months ago, so a really big sorry for taking this long to get this all done and dusted. But it's a 3D printed wagon kit, and there's a number of these appearing on the market, and 247 Developments have taken the lead in producing kits of wagons that aren't available ready to run or in kit form from anywhere else in 009, in 4mm and 7mm as well, which really goes a long way to plug a few gaps in the ready-to-run ranges. And certainly when they offered to send over this GWR Hydra Wagon in 7mm, I thought instantly that this was an opportunity for a really unique and interesting wagon to add to the Garden Railway fleet, so I jumped at the chance. Now these kits do require the addition of wheels, buffers and couplings to complete, but all of these are easily available, and in fact in the paperwork 247 Developments point you in the right direction, and there's actually also a lot of opportunity to maybe chop and change. And in my particular case, I decided to go for a wagon that had lasted somewhat later than the prototype Hydras did. Now the real ones were built for the carriage of things like carriages, horse-drawn carriages, back in the early days of the pre-1923 GWR, around 1901, that kind of time. And this was really important because, as you can imagine, your horse couldn't really get you a huge amount of distance. So if you wanted to go a long way, but take your carriage with you, then the Hydra was an important part of the equation. Later on, when early cars started appearing, they also were invaluable for being able to get rich folks fancy cars from one length of the country to the other. Because you've got to remember, the roads weren't exactly amazing back then, and early cars had this little tendency of being just a little bit unreliable at times. So the Hydra wagon was certainly useful for moving these about as well. The real wagons didn't really last into BR service, so if you want to stick to strict prototype, then they are definitely a GWR only wagon, and there are a full set of transfers that you can also get to be able to complete these to that particular period. But if, like me, you don't like being particularly constrained by prototypical accuracy, you can also have a go at maybe just updating this wagon, or what if it managed to survive into BR period and maybe right through into the 1980s. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing, and if a Wally like me can put together one of these kits, then there's definitely room for all of you to be able to do it as well, and you probably do a much better job than I did. But come with me and let's check out the 247 Developments 3D printed GWR Hydra Wagon in 7mm. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support comes from...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model double O gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I've always said that 3D printing is the bold frontier of railway modelling. It allows for the production of so many things that just weren't possible even just a few years ago, and they bring the realms of scratch building into easy reach even for the beginner novice modeller. They provide a wealth of detailing parts and also scenery parts, building kits and rolling stock and locomotives too. And this particular model from 247 Developments really struck me as having some incredibly fine detailing straight out of the packet. Gone are the days where you have to sand and fill to get a really good finish and get rid of that weird stratification. The technology really is coming on in leaps and bounds, and I must say I really enjoyed making this kit, and in particular the painting and finishing was something that I found really quite rewarding to do. But before we get into today's video, do please consider hitting that like button, sharing this video and subscribing to the channel if you've not already done so, and ring that notification bell and then you won't miss out on the new videos as they come up. We've also got the full merch store down below with a whole range of different exclusive channel products for your delectation. And as always, you can head on over to Patreon and help support the channel. And all of you who do, you're an absolute legend and I appreciate your support. But let's get on with today's video with the 247 Developments 7mm Hydra Wagon kit. Now, you probably remember this Hydra Wagon, which came from 247 Developments, which we featured as part of a Mailbag Monday. And I said at the time that I really wanted to build this up into the completed model and have it for the O-Gauge Garden Railway. And that's what I'm going to be starting to do today in this video. So as it comes from the kit, you remember we've got this one-piece 3D print, and then they actually helpfully send 6 of the axle boxes that we need. You're only going to need 4, but you've got 2 spares just in case. And what I'm going to be doing is just concentrating on painting this up. I'm going to try and track down some appropriate buffers, drawbar and also the wheels and axles to complete this up. But I thought I can get on with this and get it ready for final completion. Now, I don't model the pre-grouping period. In fact, in O-Gauge, I tend to focus on the BR into the sort of 1970s tops period. So I've picked this as something to maybe think about copying the livery on. And this is a well troll, but it's in the Satlink livery, and it's something that's caught my eye, and I think that this would be quite appropriate for the Hydra Wagon. Had these survived that long, they would have been definitely by that stage an engineer's wagon, maybe used for taking smaller equipment to and from work sites, things like little cement mixers, or maybe just piles of like bags of sand and cement, bricks, you know, something that didn't need a bigger wagon, and it would just be helpful to have this low access. So I've gone through my Humbrol paints and I've picked out matte 110, which is matte natural wood, and I'm going to be using that for the planking on this. I've also got matte number 33, and I'm going to be using that on some things like the springs, and I'm going to paint the underside in matte black as well, so if you catch a glimpse of that, it doesn't look this kind of shiny grey. Now, going back to that Satlink livery, we need a red and we need a yellow as well. So for red, I decided on this matte 60. I'm going to try that. I do want matte colours. I am going to weather them down. But then with the yellow, I can't decide really. I've got a choice of 3 here. So I've got matte 99. I've got matte 81, which looks a much more sort of faded yellow. And then I've also got this from Precision Paints, which is Rail Track Warning Yellow. Actually, I think out of all of these, this is probably the closest. So I'm going to try that, and if we need to change it at a later point, we can do that. But I'm going to get on and start painting this up. We'll do it as a time lapse. At this point, I have to say I've got a bit of a confession to make, and that is that it's about 7 months after the footage that you've just watched. So the problem with this has been actually nothing to do with the kit itself, but everything to do with availability of parts from Pico. And I've been hunting up and down for parts, and I just couldn't find anywhere that had them in stock. And when they've tried to order them in, it just seems to be on permanent back order. But luckily, I have been able to track down the parts that I wanted for this, and it's been a long time in coming, but they have finally arrived. And I'm going to share with you the link down below to where I actually got these at Rails of Sheffield, though I believe TMC, the model centre as well, is making a concerted effort to get these into stock too. So finally got them, and I can complete this build, and I've actually been really looking forward to this. The livery came together so well, and you've just watched me do that, but it's been 7 months sat on a shelf, so I'm just really pleased with how well it looks. Now, in my excitement, I did get 2 of the axle boxes in, and I do worry now that I've caused a little bit of an issue for myself in actually squeezing these wheels in between, but let's press on. And it's not going to take much work to get the wheels onto this. The buffers and drawbar I'll leave till afterwards, but the wheels themselves, these are the same as the ones that come in the Pico kits, I believe, and we've got some brass collars here, or bearings, and these will go into the axle boxes. And so anybody who has been thinking that maybe 3D printing is not going to be durable on that front, don't worry, because these are the perfect antidote to that. You get 4 in a bag. Just be careful that the carpet gods don't take their share. And these are actually, I do like the way that they are just a push fit. Just push that in. It's actually a quite a snug fit, but not tight. So they slide in, there's no movement, and they give us the basis for the wheels to get in. This is where you can see I've made a little bit of a rod for my own back. Oh, actually, no, there we go. So actually, no, that's not too bad. That's going to go in quite well. Getting that back out is going to be a little bit tough. I don't want to strain the actual 3D print too much. And then I need to turn to the axle boxes. Now, they do thoughtfully give you 6 of these. We only need 4. And I guess that this is down to partly the risk of these breaking. Some of the 3D print materials can be prone to cracking if it's kind of just cut in the wrong way. That's come off okay. I'm going to get one more. We can save the rest for either scratch building purposes, or even just if you've got a depot scene. Any of these that are spare will go into something like that. Now, one thing I will say about these is that they're a very tight fit, and don't be inclined to force those in because, again, the 3D print material doesn't like being stretched. If you try and put too much force here, you're more likely to just crack the 3D print itself. So I'm just going to use the scalpel and take a layer off here. A lot of this is things like paint, which does add a thickness. Same on the other side. So I spent a bit of time just doing that, and I've got a reasonable fit. they're not straining, they're not going to crack the actual printed moulding. So I'm quite happy with that. They're going to go on all right. But don't glue it in immediately because, of course, we're going to need to put in our bearings. And I'm actually just going to put a tiny dab of glue just down into the hole. It should just hopefully hold these into place. And I'm going to do the same for the 2 axle boxes that I've already got in here. And then we're going to get the axles into place. So I'm just going to feed that over one end. And I'm going to put a tiny amount of glue just around all of that. And let's get that into this side. Get that in. And that spins nice and freely. So we're going to move on to do the other one. And slide that down and in. Again, just adding in a little bit extra glue. Just dab off the extra. And that's perfect. So the wheels are now on and it's really free rolling. So I'm quite pleased with that. Next step is to move on to that draw gear. So we've got, I've gone for the GWR parallel shank buffers. There are a number of different ones. And my reasoning though for this is that if a wagon survived for this sort of length of time, would undergo a number of different changes. So those Monsell wooden insert wheels just wouldn't have survived into the 1980s. It would have received new wheels. So we're going to take a quick look at what we've got in here. And I've never actually done anything kit building wise with stuff like this. So I'm just looking at what we've got. And on the back, oh no, we don't get any details. So I am just a little bit curious how these go together. I must admit I'm a little bit at a loss how these are supposed to go together. There's nothing printed on the back, which is just a little bit disappointing. As far as I can tell, these go on the inside with the spring material passing through, so I guess that's going to be a fit into there. That is quite a tight fit. That's fine. I'm just trying to deduce from the picture. It really isn't clear. So I'm going to have a little bit of a rough play around with these and see if I can actually work out how they're supposed together. Pico, please, how difficult would it have been to have some kind of guidance on the back? In its made-up form, it's not as clear as perhaps it should be. I'm not much the wiser, it must be said, but I'm starting to get to grips with it. So first of all, I think we're going to have to modify the backs of these just by cutting off the kind of flange that sticks out. This particular kit doesn't need that flange, so I'm just using a small sharp modelling saw, and then we've got fairly flat at the back. Just going to make sure that's completely flat. Now I'm not 100% sure what these bits are for. I can only assume that they go at the back somehow. Not 100% sure. Now I am going to need to get these through here, I think. Again, it's quite a tight fit. I don't have a drill bit of the right size, so I'm just going to have to improvise just to open out these holes just a little bit and just whittle the way through. And then it does feel like we're kind of just about getting there on this. I don't want to force it, so I'm just going to keep going, seeing whether I can remove just a little bit more material. It's a super tight fit, but that is going in. I'm then going to just scrape a little bit of the paint off just around it to give the glue something reasonable to bond to. And I'm going to tap these in. I actually found just gentle tapping, just until it takes to the back. Might just need to turn these slightly. It's quite easy to do. And there we are, in place. Now, the buffer itself is a little bit peculiar. It's not clear whether there should be a spring. In fact, there is no spring provided. I do see a collar. I don't know whether that is part of the mechanism just to stop it from being able to go all the way in. I'm going to assume it is. And now we come to the tricky bit where we've got to get the coupling set up. I'll do the 3-link later on. First of all, got to get these going through, and just going to need to open these out just a little bit. Try our luck at lengthening these slots. Yeah, that does feel like we might be close. So I'm just going to go in again and try and elongate that slot. And that does appear to have just done the trick, so I can get these all the way in. Reasonably tight fit, I'm quite happy with that. And yeah, again at the other end. So this is where things get a bit tricky, because we don't have a lot of room in here. So on the face of it, let's get the buffers back in. I'm going to need to glue on the end, and I don't really like gluing metal to metal. I never really find that it works particularly well. I'm going to have to get these just onto the end. Let's see if we can fill it with some glue. Let's just get that out. This in. Is that going to go in? On the face of it, no, it doesn't. So I've finally given up. There just isn't enough room in there, and there's no access to get in to open it out. So what I've actually resolved to do is just putting a small amount of glue into there, and then I am just going to glue these in so they won't be sprung, which is most unfortunate. But unfortunately, that seems to be the only way that I can do that. There just isn't any other feasible way of getting the back end of all of this into place. I don't think there's enough room for them to have sprung backwards and forwards anyway. It is quite tight in there. So unfortunately, that's another area where there is a little bit of a difficulty just in building this. So not to worry, just get a little bit of glue down into there, and it's not that it's going to really compromise it too much. Possibly when shunting, pushing the wagon, you might have a few difficulties on the quite tight curves, but that's something that we're going to have to work around at a later date. In terms of the drawbar, though, we can get in there, and I am going to put in the spring. So that's going to go back and into there, and just tease it into position. And that should just get into place there, and that is fine. Again, a little bit of glue, just sort that bit out. And the final piece here, again, just tease that through and in. And now it's just simply a case of letting the glue dry and getting the painting done. On the buffer beams, I'm going to use the same yellow that I used on the rest of the wagon, and just tidy up all of this. And then I've also gone and put on the chain onto the coupling hooks, and that was a bit tricky. Thank you, Pico. That was probably one of the fiddliest things, short of getting the backs of those buffers in. But that's all done, so really pleased with that. The end result really does come together well, and as you can see with this Satlink livery, I just love the fact that you can kind of update these wagons, and my thoughts are that if a Hydra wagon had survived through into the 1980s, then the engineer's fleet is exactly where it would have ended up. And the Satlink livery is something really quite eye-catching that I thought that I would try out rather than a plain black or even engineer's olive green, and I'm really pleased with the results. I modelled it on that livery for the Well-Troll wagon, and I thought that that was probably the best point of reference, and it's come out really well. Well, I hope you really enjoyed today's video and found it informative, and as always, we've got a link down below to 247 Developments where you can find this Hydra Wagon kit and all in the rest of the range. And I hope you'll agree, actually, it's a great little project to build something new and unique, and that, quite frankly, is probably not going to appear in ready-to-run form in any time in the near future. I really did like the quality of the detailing. Now, I haven't done any sanding work or filling work on this. What you saw throughout the video is exactly how it came out of the packet, and you can see even there on the camera the plank detail on the load bed really is crisp and sharp. Looking down on this model, if you said, "Oh, that's 3D printed," I wouldn't have believed you unless I knew by having got the kit, received it in the post. And even on the underside, there's still a wealth of detail, and the only thing that I would say that this kit needs is for the user to add maybe some lead shot and just glue it in into the handy recesses in the frame, because it is just a little bit light on its wheels when you run it on the track. Apart from that, everything is pretty much perfect. The couplings, the buffers and the wheels proved a little bit difficult to source and contributed to the delay in being able to finish off this video. But that wasn't anything to do with 247 Developments, that was just that the Pico parts seemed almost like gold dust, and I did eventually track them down at Rails of Sheffield, and we got a link down below which takes you to where you can find bits and pieces for your scratch building and for your kits such as this. And it's just really useful to know that they've got these now in stock. But there are other local model shops that you can try, and we always say support your local model shop. Now, you can get custom transfers made, and that would sharpen up the running number, the sat link, and the XLO tops code that I've put on this. Strictly speaking, it probably should have a Z tops code, but I just really like to do an X, and it's quite easy to do freehand with a paintbrush. So that's the route that I went down, and that fits in with what a lot of Lomax would have run in when they were in the revenue fleet, and you could imagine that perhaps it had been painted into Satlink livery, but for whatever reason it had somehow retained its original revenue tops code. But whatever, it certainly looks great trundling around in the Garden Railway, and with an addition of a little bit of extra weight, I'm actually confident that this is going to be a really good performer out there. The wheels from Pico were actually an incredibly easy fit, and whilst the instructions do say that you might need to fiddle about with those axle boxes just to get the bearing cups in, I didn't find any issues whatsoever. They just went straight on in, and that contributes to this actually being quite durable. There's no risk of that 3D printing material being worn away by the axle ends. There were a few issues in fitting the buffers, and I did have to improvise, and in the process I lost the ability for these to be sprung loaded. But it must be said that the Pico parts are really quite Spartan on the instructions, and it wasn't clear how you would have ever been able to make these up into sprung buffers. Certainly springs weren't included, and other than actually winding your own springs, which did seem rather tedious, there wasn't really a lot of other ways of doing it. That said, there's not a lot in the recess behind the buffer beam for you to be able to have that spring loaded, so actually I think just gluing them in place in the extended position was a good compromise, and certainly I've not had any problems with buffer lock as a result of going down that route. All in all, I thought that this was a great kit, and certainly one that's more than suitable even for the novice beginner to be able to take on and be able to produce actually quite a good result. And you know, if I can do it, then you can too. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. What do you think about these kits? Is it something you've taken on? Or maybe it's something you're going to give a go too. I'd love to hear from you down there, and it's always great to read your comments. Please like, share and subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and you can check us out over on Patreon and also the full merch store down below. But until next time, you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling, bye for now. Today's video comes in association with Trainomatic, makers of DCT decoders and accessories that are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. Find the full range available to order now at tramfabriek.co.uk. Additional support is provided by...
This is Clark Railworks, and this is what we do. You'll know us from Ellis Clark Trains, and you'll get the same friendly expertise with us too. We've got a huge range of pre-owned model railways from all your favourite manufacturers, and maybe some you hadn't heard of before. It's the place to come for quality. We don't stock substandard models, and everything we sell is fully tested and photographed by model railway experts. No matter whether you model OO gauge, N, HO or more, we have sought after models from all around the world with new listings added every weekday. Check out what's available now at clarkrailworks.com and don't miss out on your latest logo.
I'd like to thank everybody over on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to our Patreon heroes. Without you guys over on Patreon, we really wouldn't be able to keep making the video content that you see on this channel. And don't forget that you can also head on over to patreon.com/Jennifer Kirk and check out the different tiers of rewards. Thank you so much. You are absolute legends.